Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. And we're happy to have you here with us today, even though we're talking about a very serious issue. It affects the First Amendment, and of course, it's the topic that most people are paying attention to. It is the overreach and the censorship that we see from the internet overlords, the internet giants on social media. And what is the reaction, a backlash that is coming from regular citizens as well as across the seas from other governments? But before we speak about that, let's first mention, if it is your first time joining us on this channel, we do long-form political commentary here. And on Sundays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you, letting you be able to speak with us to let us know what you think about the issues of the day affecting us all. Because we fight for and believe in the First Amendment. Now, speaking on that same line, the First Amendment, let's talk about what's going on today. Since the DC protests, we have seen a growing trend where people are being lumped into this an insurrection claim, rightly and wrongly. And we're seeing tens of thousands of people being affected by this. In fact, we're seeing them being removed from Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all social media platforms. In fact, we've seen platforms completely eliminated from the internet. Now, one of the things that has caused is a backlash amongst the stock markets. We see that Amazon today closed 2.15% lower in the markets. Facebook closed 4% lower. Twitter suffered a 6.4% loss in the stock market. And you may wonder, where did that come from? Why would they go lower? Well, it's in part because they're getting rid of their very lifeblood, the public, the people who are actually subscribed and using their services. The fewer of them there are, well, the less value those companies have. Just like any channel of entertainment or news, you have less people watching, well, your advertising's worth less. But it's also because people are fighting back, both in the stock, hitting these companies in their pocket, but also in other ways as well. Now, this is an issue we've been talking about for a long time. We've been speaking about the shadow banning and the censorship that has been coming from the internet giants for a long time. You may recall back in 2018 when Senator Ted Cruz at a congressional hearing asked each of those companies a very critical question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to each of the witnesses. I'd like to start by asking each of the company representatives a simple question, which is, do you consider your companies to be neutral public fora? Ms. Becker?
Thank you, Senator. The mission of our company is to connect people. We do not look at ideology or politics. We want people to be able to connect and share who they are.
So I'm just looking for a yes or no, whether you consider yourself to be a neutral public forum.
We do not have any policies about political ideology that affect our platform.
Ms. Downs?
Yes, our goal is to design products for everyone, subject to our policies and the limitations they impose on the types of content that people may share on our products.
So you're saying you do consider YouTube to be a neutral public forum?
Correct. We enforce our policies in a politically neutral way. Certain things are prohibited by our community guidelines, which are spelled out and provided publicly to all of our users.
Mr. Manje?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's stop right. And as we heard, each and every one of these channels, each and every one of these social media giants have said, oh no, we're neutral. We don't pick sides. We're completely and absolutely neutral. That was in 2018. And even at that time, we spoke about the censorship, the shadow banning that was ongoing, where Jack Dorsey just 1 year earlier had mentioned that 600,000 Americans were being censored. Matter of fact, let me show you the article. This is from the Mercury News. And this was in congressional hearings September of 2018, separate of the one with Senator Cruz, as we just showed you, where Jack Dempsey, the CEO of Twitter, made it very clear that 600,000 accounts were shadow banned. That included members of Congress. And the one thing all 600 of these accounts had in common, including the members of Congress, was the fact that they all were conservatives and Republicans. Not one of the Democrats, the progressives, the far left, none of them were affected. So we know for a fact that Twitter, Facebook, Google have lied to the American people, that their services aren't neutral. They say that to try and maintain their power due to Section 230, but that's not the truth. Let me go further to prove my point. Because we see, as reported today, former Senator Ron Paul, a libertarian, an individual known for his nonpartisan viewpoints, his defense of freedom, his desire to reduce the number of conflicts around the world that America is involved in and to reduce the debt, Ron Paul is being censored by Facebook without reason, without cause, without warning. That is what he is reported today. We know that, according to the Epoch Times, that Facebook is going to scrub all content across the platform of Facebook. They're removing all the content if it says stop the steal. Whether you said, oh, I'm against that, or whether you said you were for it, whether you gave it a like, it doesn't matter. It's all going to be removed. Not without warning, without you having anything to do with it, it's going to be removed. And perhaps even worse, because as we saw reported at 7:25 tonight, January 11th, we saw that law enforcement today stated that 900,000 of its members, nearly 1 million people, were blocked from posting, that all of their administrators were blocked from posting to any page and any group that they happened to be associated with. They were being punished for being part of law enforcement today. Now, is that because law enforcement today may have said, stop the steal, as long as it's peaceful, please go ahead? As long as it's peaceful, go ahead and protest. Is that the reason why? Was it because they said, we defend the law and members of Antifa don't like that? I don't know, because Facebook didn't say. All they decided was, we need to punish you. All 900,000 members, libertarians, Republicans, conservatives alike. And we know that the only people that seem to be cheering this are senators like Senator Leahy, Senator Blumenthal, who have called for more censorship from Facebook, from Twitter, from the social media giants. This is dangerous as well as troubling. And we know this because it's not just this channel. It's not just Americans who are saying this. It is the world leaders that are beginning to speak up, like Angela Merkel. She is the Chancellor of Germany. She is no fan of Donald Trump. And even she, through her office, her official office, a Mr. Stefan Siebert, spoke and said, quote, this fundamental right can be intervened, that right being freedom of speech, but according to the law and within the framework defined by legislators, not according to a decision by management of social media platforms. Seen from this angle, the Chancellor Angela Merkel of Germany considers it problematic that the accounts of the U.S. president have now been permanently blocked. Let's think about what she's saying there. If this can happen to a sitting active president. That is President Donald Trump. No matter what Nancy Pelosi or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez may want, he is the president of the United States for at least the next 9 days. And because of that, he should not be removed, but yet he has been barred. He has been banned from social media, from reaching out and speaking to the American public, as well as other world leaders. Are there other ways that they may communicate? Absolutely. But that's not the point. This is a means. That's like what's happening right now is as if the New York Times decided that they no longer wanted to report any news about what President Trump is doing. Like if they didn't want to report that he has worked on 4 peace plans in the Middle East, increasing the world peace exponentially more than any president and pretty much any world figure before him. Maybe they don't want to tell you that. Would that be good for the American people? Would that be good for the world? And if they can do this to the United States sitting president, who else could they do it to? Joe Biden? Angela Merkel? The Prime Minister of Britain? President of France? Cuba? Venezuela? Name the nation. Who could they not do this to at a whim? Because they don't like it. Not that the American people don't like it. Not that it has violated a law, but because they don't like it. So therefore, you can't hear it. There was a word for this back in the old days, and that was called yellow journalism. It meant that these were made-up stories. These were fictitious actions. These were denials of public. It's also called propaganda. And that's exactly what we're seeing. It's silencing of the voices. What did they call it in the book 1984? It's punishing people for wrongthink, re-educating them. There are so many ways to look at this, and not one is positive. But as we said, people are fighting back. And it's more than just in their stock prices. In fact, what we're seeing in the Spokesman Review, their story today, January 11th, highlights that a North Idaho internet provider is blocking Facebook and Twitter upon the request of their subscribers over censorship claims. Now, this is very important to understand in its correct standing. And Greg Mason does a good job of making sure he covers the full scope of this story. There have been, since the censoring has been going on by Facebook and by Twitter, there are millions of Americans who are upset as well as being affected. And many of them have decided to abandon Facebook, Twitter, and other social media companies. Now, one of the things that has happened is that customers in North Idaho have come to their local ISP provider, their internet provider, in this case, your T1 Wi-Fi, and said, remove these channels from our internet. We want them blocked. We do not want these services. We do not want to support these companies. And as a good company doing customer service, they have complied. In fact, and I quote, as a lot of customers have stated, they do not want their children or their family connecting to these sites and do not have the know-how to stop them from appearing, so they asked us to do it for them. It's just that simple. People are rejecting and abandoning Twitter and Facebook and Google and YouTube in droves, seeking out alternatives, saying, we reject your censorship. We reject your limitations on our free speech and our ability to have independent thought. Now, there are some people, of course, who are upset about that. And they believe, as Krista Yep happens to mention that this is insurrection, that to allow people to choose to block Facebook and Twitter because they don't agree with those companies, well, that is the same as supporting insurrection. Somehow, I don't think Krista Yep knows what the word insurrection might actually mean. She may not understand what it is to force others to submit against their will, which happens to be a crime, as well as being morally repugnant. But people are fighting back. They're fighting back against this shadow banning. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of ways to do it. We have some people who, a friend of mine, Frank Johnson, created the Freedom Forum, which I am a member of, and I have decided to pay to allow this site to be available. I am helping to chip in to pay for these services, to promote free speech. That's just one of many choices that are available to the American people. That's what America is about. Competition, freedom, and going out and searching for it, to find ways that are not under the control of one of the internet giants like Amazon or Facebook or Google or Twitter, and to find their own way to be able to speak about the issues that matter to them. I think that's important. I think it's brave. And yes, I do mean brave. Excuse me. In this environment, it's brave to stand up and say, no, block Facebook, block Twitter, because I don't agree, because I don't believe in losing my First Amendment rights because some CEO has a personal preference. You have the ability to stand up and make a difference, whether that's going to gab.com, to go to Parler when they do eventually return, because they will, or to going to alternatives like the Freedom Forum or others that are coming up and rising at this time. Freedom of speech is freedom. Freedom of thought is being an individual, a human being, and it deserves respect. Something that Facebook, Twitter, Google, Amazon seem not to understand or not to value. We stand with those in North Idaho. We stand with those on the Freedom Forum, those on Gab, and all the alternatives. We respect free speech. Everyone should. That doesn't mean compliance. That doesn't mean we have to agree. It certainly doesn't mean insurrection. It certainly doesn't mean violence. It just means we want to be free. I think we all should be able to agree with that. There is a way to fight back. We are fighting back, and the fight is not over. I thank you. I hope to see you on Sunday at 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. And if you have enjoyed any part of this, we do ask you, like, share, and if you will, subscribe.